that they would take a risk. And when asked whether or not the risk was worth it, whether or not they would skip all of the talent they saw in college and go straight to high school, whether it was worth it, some of them or most of them said, well, we'll just have to wait and see. Because our success as a team is contingent upon whether or not these high school players, listen to this, live up and live out their potential. 2,000 years ago, when Jesus died on the cross, resurrected, and decided that he would build a great church, he drafted us, those of us that follow him, to be on his team, to make an impact in this world, because he saw potential. He knew what a group of people like us, fully committed to him, would be able to do in this lifetime. But I believe that Jesus said, like the NBA executive said, their impact, or the impact of the church on the community in Grand Bahama and in the world, is contingent upon whether or not my people who I drafted are prepared to live up and live out their potential. Kevin Garnett, Dwight Howard, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, they all took the NBA to the next level. Today we are going to talk about taking our faith to the next level. We're going to be talking about level up living. How can we level up? How can we go to the next level in our faith? In our relationships, in our career, and everything in life. Because I believe that impact and success is contingent upon whether or not we continuously grow. Whether or not we continuously reach, whether or not we live up to the expectations that God has already put on all of us. And so I believe in Matthew chapter 25, there's a secret sauce. There are some things that we can do to ensure that we do not disappoint. Now, all of the NBA teams that drafted high school players, all of the players did not pan out. Some of them became known as busts. These are people with high expectations, overhyped, and just never lived up. We can't afford to be that kind of follower of Christ. We cannot be Christian busts. But the only way to not become a bust is to level up, to push the envelope, to go to the next level. Well, I believe in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus tells this story, and embedded in this story, as we unpack it, as we meditate on it, as we wrestle with it this morning, I believe it gives us 3 things that we can do to live up to and live out our potential as believers. And I believe that if we do them, we'll be fine, you know. I believe that if we do them, we will be fine. But the key is embracing it and believing it. So what 3 things can we do to level up, to experience next level living? How do we live out our potential? How do we maximize it? Well, number 1, the first thing we ought to do is I believe that we need to be able to see potential. We have to be able to see potential in life. When we wake up in the morning and we look in the mirror, what do we see? Do you see that you are fearfully and wonderfully made? Do you see a person who God fashioned in his image? Do you see an individual who God had already spoken a word over, saying that I want you to prosper even as your soul prospers? Do you see potential in your life? Webster defines potential as the capacity to become more, Do you see yourself spiritually, relationally, financially, physically, whatever, as possessing the capacity to become more? Because if you don't, we are going to end up being a bust in whatever we do. Not James, but here's what Jesus says. In Matthew chapter 25, he tells them this story, and the reason he tells them this story was because he gave them a whole lot of truth in chapter 24. And figuratively, what he was saying was, now that you have all of the information you need, what are you going to do with it? You have an enormous amount of material. You have my presence with you. You have my power with you. You have tremendous potential to do great things. What are you going to do with it? Do you see it? If we see potential in our life, if we live with potential, you know what potential says to us? That where we start, we don't necessarily have to stay. That's what potential says. Potential says to us that every obstacle in our life could eventually become an opportunity for something else. That's what potential says. Paul, in Philippians chapter 3, he understood potential and the role potential plays in our lives. In Philippians chapter 3, verse 12, here's what he says. Because when you have potential, when you recognize potential, you talk differently. Paul says this in Philippians chapter 3, verse 12. Not that I have already obtained all of this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that which Christ Jesus took hold of me. He says, my brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of this, but there's one thing I do. I forget the things which are behind me, and I press on to the upward call. That's what he says. That's potential. Here's Paul saying, I don't have everything. And if I compare myself with the person sitting next to me, I may even have a deficit. But I do not have to stay where I start. That is what potential says. And if we're going to go to the next level in our relationships, finances, whatever, we have to embrace this idea that potential has been given to all of us. Every single one of us. It's been given to all of us. The Bible says in this story that the master came and he gave them to everybody. He gave it to everybody.